My daughter ignored me for 15 years until she found out I had won $36 million. That day, my daughter arrived at my new villa with her suitcases, her husband, and her parents-in-law and said, "We want our share. We need our own rooms." I smiled and did what I should have done a long time ago, and they regretted coming. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The camera flashes burned white spots into my vision. I stood there at the Florida Lottery headquarters in Tallahassee, gripping an oversized check for $36 million, while lottery officials pumped my hand and reporters shouted over each other. My face hurt from the forced smile. "Wilbert, you're the luckiest man in Florida." The lottery official's voice boomed through the microphone. "What's the first thing you'll buy?" I adjusted my grip on the ridiculous cardboard check. The thing was nearly as tall as I was. Nothing extravagant. I've lived simply for 67 years. That won't change. A reporter in the third row stood waving her recorder. "Do you have family to share this with?" The question landed like a punch. I held my smile. I have what I need. But the truth twisted in my chest. I had one daughter. Past tense felt more accurate after 15 years of silence. The press conference dragged on for another 20 minutes. Questions about my plans, my background, my retirement from the logistics company where I'd managed supply chains for 40 years. Every answer I gave became public record, my full name, my face plastered across screens. By Florida law, lottery winners couldn't hide. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like valuable cargo sitting on an unguarded loading dock. The money hit my account 3 days later. After federal and state taxes carved their portions, $21 million appeared in my checking account. 21 million. The number didn't feel real. I sat in my apartment that night, staring at the bank's website on my laptop. The balance mocked me with its string of zeros. I knew how to plan, how to anticipate problems, how to protect valuable cargo. That's what I'd done for 4 decades. Moved millions of dollars worth of products across the country, calculated risks, prevented theft. But this was different. This cargo was me. The next morning, I walked into First National Bank and asked for their top financial advisor. The man who met me wore a suit that cost more than my monthly rent. He shook my hand, led me to a private office, and spent the first 10 minutes congratulating me. Then his tone shifted. "With this amount, Mr. Bailey, you'll want to protect yourself from opportunists. Family claims can be." I cut him off. "I understand risk assessment. That's what I did for 40 years. Let's talk about trusts." His eyebrows lifted slightly. We spent the next 2 hours discussing asset protection strategies, investment portfolios, and legal shields. I took notes in the same methodical way I'd once tracked shipments. Route the money through multiple accounts. Establish trusts. Create barriers. Protect the cargo. 2 weeks later, I closed on a villa in the Orlando suburbs. $1.2 million paid in cash. The realtor kept saying how lucky I was. I didn't feel lucky. I felt like I was building a fortress I'd inhabit alone. Moving day came with December rain. Boxes filled with my modest possessions looked ridiculous in rooms designed for families. I unpacked methodically, placing each item with precision. Dishes in the kitchen cabinets sorted by size. Books arranged alphabetically on the study shelves. Clothes hung in the master closet with military spacing between hangers. The house felt too big, too quiet. I'd imagined retirement differently once. Grandkids visiting, family dinners, laughter echoing off these walls. That version died 15 years ago. I stood on the back porch that first evening, watching the sun set over unfamiliar landscape. The villa had cost more than I'd earned in my entire working life. Yet it felt hollow. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through contacts from the logistics company, men I'd worked with for decades. I could call them, invite them over, fill the silence. I put the phone away. What would I say? Come see my millions, admire my isolation. Lula stopped calling a long time ago. I stopped expecting her to start again. My daughter existed somewhere out there, living a life that didn't include me. I'd made peace with that, or told myself I had. 3 days after I moved in, the local news ran another story. I caught it by accident, flipping channels after dinner. Orlando retiree wins $36 million. There I was on the screen, frozen in that moment at lottery headquarters, holding the oversized check. The caption listed my name. The reporter mentioned my age, my background, the size of my winnings. My address wasn't public, but my name and face were everywhere. I turned off the television and returned to unpacking. The study still needed organizing. I'd bought new shelves for my collection of logistics textbooks, supply chain management guides, efficiency handbooks, the books from a life I no longer lived. I spent the afternoon arranging them, creating order from chaos. That's what I did best. Systems, structure, predictability. The doorbell rang at 4:30. I froze, book in hand. I hadn't ordered anything, hadn't invited anyone. The only people who knew my new address were my lawyer and the bank. I walked to the front window and peered through the blinds. An unfamiliar sedan sat in my driveway, luggage strapped to the roof rack. Two figures stood at my door, partially obscured by the porch overhang. My pulse accelerated. 40 years of protecting cargo had taught me to recognize threats. Unexpected visitors after a lottery win weren't visitors. They were problems. I moved closer to the window, angling for a better view. His breath caught. Through the window's edge, he glimpsed a face he hadn't seen in 15 years. My hand stayed frozen on the doorknob. The face outside the window belonged to a memory I'd buried deep. I forced myself to breathe, counted to 3, then opened the door. Lula stood on my porch, 38 years old now, though the years had sharpened her features rather than softened them. Behind her stood a man I recognized from old photographs. Neil, her husband. Their suitcases crowded the entrance like they'd already decided to stay. "Hi, Dad." Surprise. Lula's voice carried false brightness. "We thought you could use some company now that you're rich." The word Dad hit like a slap. 15 years since I'd heard her call me that. The last time she'd been 23, screaming it like an accusation. Neil stepped forward, arms crossed, his smile calculated. "Family should stick together, especially with this kind of money. We're here to help you manage everything." I said nothing, just stood there, door half open, watching them perform this rehearsed reunion. "We saw you on TV," Lula continued, her enthusiasm aggressive. "We're so proud of you. $36 million. That's incredible. We brought our things. We figured we'd stay a while, help you settle into this big house. You'll need our rooms ready tonight." Not a question, a statement. They'd already decided. 15 years collapsed in my mind. My small apartment cramped and hot. Lula standing in the living room, Neil behind her like a shadow. She was 23, engaged, planning a wedding. I'd saved $10,000 over 2 years. Every spare penny from my logistics manager salary. "We need $50,000, Dad." Young Lula's voice echoed in my memory. "For the wedding and Neil's investment opportunity." "It's a sure thing." I'd handed her the checkbook open to show the balance. "It's all I have, Lula, for your wedding. 10,000. Take it with my blessing." Her face had twisted. 10,000? That's insulting. Neil's startup needs 50,000 minimum. You're a warehouse manager making 60,000 a year. You're nobody. You've never accomplished anything. "It's everything I've saved," I'd said quietly. "For you." She'd thrown the checkbook at me, the pages scattered across the floor. "Then you're even more pathetic than I thought." Neil's hand had been on her shoulder, nodding agreement, encouraging the rage. They'd walked out. The door slammed. 15 years of silence followed. "Dad." Present-day Lula waved her hand in front of my face. "Are you listening? We need to get settled." I snapped back. Lula stood there, smile bright, eyes calculating. Neil had already picked up a suitcase, stepping past me into the foyer without invitation. "You'll get exactly what you deserve," I said, my voice calm and measured. "Give me time to think about arrangements." Lula's smile widened. She exchanged a glance with Neil. They interpreted my words as agreement, as weakness. Neil carried their luggage inside, his eyes scanning the villa like he was cataloging assets. He paused at the new television, the leather furniture, the modern kitchen visible through the archway, calculating value. Lula walked through the house, opening doors. This place needs work. The furniture's cheap. When are you upgrading? She claimed the largest guest room. This one's ours. Then pointed to the second bedroom. Neil needs office space for his business calls. I followed them silently, hands clenched at my sides, maintaining the careful neutrality I'd learned managing difficult clients. Show nothing. Reveal no emotion. Assess the situation. We should talk about getting power of attorney set up, Lula said, testing me. You're not getting any younger, Dad. Someone needs to help you make decisions about all this money. I spent 40 years managing distribution, I said, each word deliberate. I know how to allocate resources. Neil smirked. Look, Wilbert, family takes care of family. You're sitting on millions now. Lula's your only daughter. We should discuss how to distribute resources fairly. We have some ideas about investments. I'll think about what's fair. I interrupted and let me think. They settled into their rooms, unpacking like they owned the place. I heard them through the walls, their voices carrying. He looks older, Neil said. Frielier. He'll listen to reason, Lula replied. He always does. They hadn't come for me. They'd come for $21 million. I walked to my study, closed the door, locked it, leaned against the wood, breathing deeply, forcing my pulse to slow. Then I crossed to my desk, pulled out my phone, and searched. Estate planning attorney, Orlando, Florida. The first result showed a 5-star rating. Robert Chun, specializing in estate planning and asset protection. I dialed Chun Law offices. The receptionist's voice was professional. Robert Chen's office. I need a consultation about inheritance law and asset protection. Tomorrow, if possible, it's urgent. Let me check his schedule. A pause. Keys clicking. He has an opening at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Would that work? I'll be there. I hung up, pulled out a fresh notebook from my desk drawer, opened to the first page, wrote at the top, Asset Protection Strategy. Outside my study, Lula Neal's voices continued, discussing furniture upgrades, investment opportunities, how to convince me to share access to my accounts. I began writing. 40 years of supply chain management had taught me how to track valuable cargo, anticipate theft, implement countermeasures. This situation wasn't different, just required a different kind of logistics. They wanted what they thought I owed them. They'd walked away 15 years ago when I had nothing to offer except love. Now they'd returned because I had everything to take. I wrote faster, my handwriting sharp and precise. Names, dates, documentation, the truth about the checkbook thrown at my feet. The words Lula had screamed. Neil's calculating presence, evidence, protection, planning. I'd spent my career ensuring valuable cargo reached its proper destination. This cargo, my money, my life, my dignity, would reach exactly where I intended. Through the walls, Lula laughed at something Neil said. The sound grated. You'll get what you deserve, I told them. I meant it. I told Lula and Neil I had banking business to handle. They didn't question it. They were too busy measuring windows for new curtains they expected me to buy. The attorney had an opening the next morning. I arrived 15 minutes early. Robert Chen's office occupied the 10th floor of a gray building in downtown Orlando. The waiting room smelled of leather and furniture polish. Legal texts lined the walls in perfect rows. A place built on order and precision. I appreciated that. Chun met me exactly at 9, 45 years old, wire-rimmed glasses, handshake firm and brief. He gestured to the chair across from his mahogany desk. Mr. Bailey, you mentioned inheritance law on the phone. How can I help? I slid a handwritten note across the desk. My assets listed in my neat block letters. Chun read it, nodded slowly. Florida law is clear, Mr. Bailey. He pulled a leather-bound book from the shelf, open to a marked page. You have absolute right to distribute your estate as you choose. Your daughter has no legal claim to inheritance simply by being your child. Even though she's my only child. The relief I felt surprised me. She can't argue she deserves something. She can argue anything. Chun tapped the statute with one finger. She won't win, especially with 15 years of no contact documented. I leaned forward. My daughter hasn't spoken to me in 15 years. 3 days after I won the lottery, she appeared with suitcases. Chen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Recognition. I've seen this pattern. We'll draft an airtight will. We spent the next hour on specifics. I dictated my terms clearly. Entire estate split between Florida Veteran Support 60% and Orange County Animal Shelter 40%. Organizations that actually helped people who deserved it. Chen wrote, then read it back. Will include an explicit disinheritance clause. Listen to this language. I explicitly disinherit my daughter, Lula Bailey, not due to any deficiency on her part, but because I choose to direct my assets or toward causes I support. Why phrase it that way? Shows mental competence and deliberate choice. Protects against contest claims. You're not acting from spite or confusion. You're making a reasoned decision about your assets. The first piece of the puzzle locked into place. We signed the will. Chen's assistant notarized it. The document went into Chen's firm vault, legal and binding. As I stood to leave, Chen handed me a business card. If you need background information, Marcus Green is thorough and discreet. Private investigator, former police detective. I pocketed the card. That afternoon, I sat across from Marcus Green at a coffee shop 3 blocks from my villa. 52 years old, methodical eyes, hands folded on the table between us. What do you need to know? His voice carried no judgment. Financial situation, debts, employment. Why they're really here. Marcus pulled out a notepad. 2 weeks full report. Bank records if I can access them legally. 3,000 retainer. I wrote the check. 10 days crawled by. At the villa, Lula and Neil settled deeper into my space. I returned home one evening to find they'd rearranged the living room furniture. Couch moved, chairs repositioned. My carefully organized books scattered across new shelves they'd ordered without asking. We made some improvements, Lula announced, gesturing around the room. This place needs personality. I said nothing, just photographed the changes with my phone. Neil cornered me in the kitchen the next morning. He held his tablet like a weapon, showing me crude presentation slides. I have a business opportunity, Wilbert. Food delivery app. Revolutionary concept. His enthusiasm felt rehearsed. Think Uber Eats meets social media. 200,000 gets us to launch. I'm offering you ground floor equity. 10% ownership. I spent 40 years in logistics, Neil. I kept my voice pleasant. I know supply chains. Food delivery margins are razor thin. I'll think about it. His jaw tightened. Thinking too long means missing out. This needs to move now. Let me consider it, I repeated. He walked away, frustration evident in his stride. That evening, Marcus called. Coffee shop tomorrow, 2 o'clock. I arrived early. Marcus slid a manila folder across the table, thick, heavy with pages. They're drowning, he said simply. You're the life raft. I opened the folder. Credit card statements, 6 cards, all maxed. Total $47,000. Personal loans, $28,000. Payments 2 months behind. Their Tampa apartment, $1,800 monthly, 3 months behind. Eviction notice filed in December. Neil's investment history filled 3 pages. Cryptocurrency pyramid scheme, $10,000 loss last year. Failed business registrations. Unpaid vendor invoices. Combined income, $52,000 annually. Lula worked part-time retail. Neil did commission sales. Mostly unsuccessful. I photographed each document methodically. Marcus tapped the eviction notice with a blunt finger.